Hello everyone! I hope you're ready for another adventure, because today, Wayne continues to read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Always remember that as we go through this story, all you have to do is press the CC button if you want to follow along with the words. With every story, we have a special guest that is able to help us follow along and read the story along with us. Do you know who's going to be here? You've guessed it. It's going to be Madame Owl. Hello, Madame Owl. Are you ready to read some Harry Potter today? Madame Owl is ready, so let's jump in. Chapter 3. The Letters from No One. The escape of the Brazilian boa constrictor earned Harry his longest punishment ever. By the time he was allowed out of the cupboard again, the summer holidays had started and Dudley had already broken in his new video camera, crashed his remote control airplane, and first time out of his racing bike, knocked down old Mrs. Figg as she crossed Pivot Drive on her crutches. Harry was glad school was over, but there was no escaping Dudley's gang, who visited the house every single day. Piers, Dennis, Malcolm, and Gordon were all big and stupid, and as Dudley was the biggest and stupidest of the lot, he was their leader. The rest of them were quite happy to join Dudley's favorite sport, Harry hunting. This was why Harry spent much of his time as possible out of the house, wandering around and thinking about the end of the holidays, where he could see a tiny ray of hope. When September came, he would be going off to secondary school, and for the first time in his life, he wouldn't be with Dudley. Dudley had been accepted to Uncle Vernon's old private school, Smeltings. Piers Plotkiss was going there too. Harry, on the other hand, was going to Stonewall High, the local public school. Dudley thought this was very funny. They stuffed people's heads down the toilet the first day at Stonewall, he told Harry. Want to come upstairs and practice? No thanks, said Harry. The poor toilets never had anything as horrible as my head down it. It might get sick. Then he ran before Dudley could work out what he said. One day, in July, Aunt Petunia took Dudley to London to buy his Smeltings uniform, leaving Harry at Mrs. Figg's. Mrs. Figg wasn't as bad as usual. It turned out she'd broken her leg tripping over one of her cats, and she didn't seem quite as fond of them as before. She let Harry watch television and gave him a bit of chocolate cake that tasted as though she'd never had it for several years. She let Harry watch television and gave him a bit of chocolate cake that tasted as though she hadn't had it for several years. That evening, Dudley paraded around the living room for the family in his brand new uniform. Smelting boys wore maroon tailcoats, orange knickerbockers, and flat straw hats called boaters. They also carried knobbly sticks, used for hitting each other while the teacher wasn't looking. This was supposed to be good training for later in life? As he looked at Dudley in his new knickerbockers, Uncle Vernon said gruffly that it was the proudest moment in his life. Aunt Petunia burst into tears and said she couldn't believe that her ickle Duncans, he looked so handsome and grown up. Harry didn't trust himself to speak. He thought of 2 of his ribs might already have been cracked from trying not to laugh too hard. There was a horrible smell in the kitchen the next morning when Harry went up for breakfast. It seemed to be coming from a large metal tub in the sink. He went to have a look. The tub was full of what looked like dirty rags swimming in gray water. "What's this?" he asked Aunt Petunia. Her lips tightened as they always if he dared ask a question. "Your new uniform," she said. Henry looked in the bowl again. "Oh," he said. "I didn't realize it had to be so wet." "Don't be stupid," snapped Aunt Petunia. "I'm dyeing some of Dudley's old gray things for you. It'll look like everyone else's when I'm finished." Harry seriously doubted this, but thought it best not to argue. He sat down at the table and tried not to think about how he was going to look on the first day at Stonewall Hall, like he was wearing bits of old elephant skin, probably. Dudley and Uncle Vernon came in. Both wrinkled their noses at the smell of Harry's new uniform. Uncle Vernon opened his newspaper as usual, and Dudley banged his smelting stick, which he carried everywhere, on the table. They heard a click in the mail slot and flop of letters on the doormat. "Get the mail, Dudley," said Uncle Vernon from behind his paper. "Make Harry get it." "Get the mail, Harry. Make Dudley get it." "Poke him with your smelting stick, Dudley." Harry dodged the smelting stick and went to get the mail. 3 things lay on the doormat. A postcard for Uncle Vernon's sister Marge, who was vacationing on the Isle of Wight, a brown envelope that looked like a bill, and a letter for Harry? Harry picked it up and stared at it. His heart was twanging like an elastic band. No one in his whole life had ever written him. Who would? He has no friends, no relatives. He didn't even belong to the library, so he never got rude notes asking for books back. Yet here it was, a letter addressed to him so plain there could be no mistake. Mr. H. Potter, The Cupboard Under the Stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey. The envelope was thick and heavy, made of yellowish parchment, and address was written in emerald ink. There was no stamp. Turning the envelope over, his hands trembled. Harry saw a purple wax seal bearing a coat of arms, a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake, surrounding a large letter H. "Hurry up, boy!" shouted Uncle Vernon from the kitchen. "What are you doing, checking for letter bombs?" He chuckled at his own joke. Harry went back to the kitchen, still staring at his letter. He handed Uncle Vernon the bill and the postcard, and sat down and slowly began to open the yellow envelope. Uncle Vernon ripped open the bill, stored it in disgust, and flipped open the postcard. "Marge is ill," he informed Aunt Petunia. Ain't a funny whelk." "Dad," said Dudden suddenly. "Dad, Harry's got something." Harry was at the point of unfolding his letter, which was written in the same heavy parchment as the envelope, when it was sharply taken out of his hand by Uncle Vernon. "That's mine," said Harry, trying to snatch it back. "Who be writing to you?" Uncle Vernon sneered, shaking the letter open with his hand and glancing at it. His face went from red to green, faster than a set of traffic lights. And it didn't stop there. Within seconds, it was grayish-white of old porch. "Petunia," he gasped. Dudley tried to grab the letter to read it, but Uncle Vernon held it out high out of his reach. Aunt Petunia took it curiously and read the first line. For a moment, it was as though she might faint. She clutched her throat, making a choking noise. "Vernon! Oh my goodness, Vernon!" They stared at each other, seeming to have forgotten that Harry and Dudley were still in the room. Dudley wasn't used to being ignored. He gave his father a sharp tap on the head with his smelting stick. "I want to read that letter," he said loudly. "I want to read it," said Harry furiously. "It's mine." "Get out, both of you," Vernon croaked, stuffing the letter inside his pocket. Harry didn't move. "I want my letter," he shouted. "Let me see it," said Dudley. "Out!" Uncle Vernon roared, and he took both Harry and Dudley by the scruffs of their neck and threw them into the hall, slamming the kitchen door behind them. Dudley and Harry promptly had a furious but silent fight over who would listen at the keyhole. Dudley won, so Harry, his glasses dangling from his ear, lay flat on his stomach to listen to the crack between the door and the floor. "Vernon," Aunt Petunia was saying in a quivering voice, "look at the address. How could they possibly know where he sleeps? You don't think they've been watching the house?" "Watching? Spying? Might be following us," Uncle Vernon said wildly. "But what should we do, Vernon? Should we write back? Tell them that we don't want?" Harry could see Uncle Vernon's shiny black shoes pacing up and down the kitchen. "No," he said firmly. "No, we'll ignore it. If they don't get an answer, yes, that's best. We won't do anything. But, not having one in the house, Petunia, didn't we swear when we took him in that we'd stamp out this dangerous nonsense?" That evening, when he got back from work, Uncle Vernon did something he'd never done before. He visited Harry in his cupboard. "Where's my letter?" said Harry, the moment Uncle Vernon had squeezed through the door. "Who's writing to me?" "No one. It was addressed to you by mistake," Uncle Vernon shortly. "I burned it." "It was not a mistake," said Harry angrily. "It had my cupboard on it." "Silence!" yelled Uncle Vernon, and a couple of spiders fell from the ceiling. He took a few deep breaths and then forced his face to smile, which looked quite painful. Yes, Harry. About this cupboard, your aunt and I have been thinking. You're really getting big for it. We think it might be nice if you moved into Dudley's second bedroom? Why? Said Harry. Don't ask questions, snapped his uncle. Take this stuff upstairs now. The Dudleys' house had 4 bedrooms. One for Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia, one for visitors, usually Uncle Vernon's sister Marge, and one where Dudley slept, and one where Dudley kept all the toys and things that wouldn't fit into his first room. It only took Harry one trip upstairs to move everything he owned from one cupboard to this room. He sat down on the bed and stared around him. Nearly everything in here was broken. The month-old video camera was lying on top of a small working tank Dudley had once driven over the neighbor's dog. In the corner, Dudley's first television set, which he'd put his foot through when his favorite program had been canceled. There was a large bird cage, which had once held a parrot that Dudley had swapped at school for a real air rifle, which was on the shelf with the end all bent because Dudley had sat on it. Other shelves were full of books. They were the only things in the room that looked as though had never been touched. From downstairs came the sound of Dudley bawling at his mother. I don't want him in there. I need that room. Make him get out. Harry sighed and stretched out on the bed. Yesterday, he'd have given anything to be up here. Today, he'd rather be back in the cupboard with that letter than up here without it. Next morning at breakfast, everyone was rather quiet. Dudley was in shock. He screamed, whacked his father with a smelting stick, been sick on purpose, kicked his mother, and thrown his tortoise through the greenhouse roof. And he still didn't have his room back. Harry was thinking about this time yesterday and bitterly wishing he'd opened the letter in the hallway. Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia kept looking at each other darkly. When the mail arrived, Uncle Vernon, who seemed to be trying to be nice to Harry, made Dudley go get it. They heard him banging things with his smelting stick all the way down. Then he shouted, There's another one! Mr. H. Potter, the smallest bedroom, 4 Privet Drive. With a strangled cry, Uncle Vernon left from the seat and ran down the hall, Harry right behind him. Uncle Vernon had to wrestle Dudley to the ground to get the letter from him, which was made difficult by the fact that Harry had grabbed Uncle Vernon around the neck from behind. After a minute of confused fighting in which everyone had got hit by the smelting stick, Uncle Vernon straightened up, gasped for breath, with Harry's letter clutched in his hand. Go to your cupboard. I mean your bedroom, he wheezed at Dudley. Dudley, just go. Harry walked around and around his new room. Someone knew he had moved out of the cupboard, and they seemed to know he hadn't received his first letter. Surely that meant they'd try again. And this time, he'd make sure they didn't fail. He had a plan. The repaired alarm clock ran at 6 o'clock the next morning. Harry turned it off and dressed silently. He mustn't wake the Dursleys. He stole downstairs without turning on any lights. He was going to wait for the postman at the corner of Privet Drive and get the letters for number 4 first. His heart hammered as he crept across the dark room towards the front door. Arg! Harry leapt into the air. He'd trodden on something big and squashy on the doormat. Something alive. Lights clicked on upstairs, and to his horror, Harry realized that the big squashy thing was his uncle's face. Uncle Vernon had been lying at the foot of the front door in a sleeping bag, clearly making sure that Harry didn't do exactly what he was trying to do. He shouted at Harry for half an hour, and then told him to go and make a cup of tea. Harry shuffled miserably off into the kitchen, and by the time he got back, the mail had arrived, right into Uncle Vernon's lap. Harry could see the letters, and addressed in green ink. I want, he began, but Uncle Vernon was tearing the letters into pieces before his eyes. Uncle Vernon didn't go to work that day. He stayed at home and nailed up the mail slot. See, he explained to Aunt Petunia through a mouthful of nails, if they can't deliver them, they'll just give up. I'm not sure that'll work, Vernon. Oh, these people's minds work in strange ways, Petunia. They're not like you and me, said Uncle Vernon, trying to knock a nail into a piece of fruitcake Aunt Petunia had just bought him. On Friday, no less, Then 12 letters arrived for Harry. As they couldn't go through the mail slot, they had been pushed under the door, slotted through the sides, and even a few forced through the small window in the downstairs bathroom. Uncle Vernon stayed at home again. Burning all the letters, he got a hammer and nails and boarded up the cracks around the front door, the back doors, so no one could get out. He hummed, tiptoed through the tulips as he worked, and jumped at small noises. On Saturday, things began to get out of hand. 24 letters to Harry found their way into the house, rolled up and hidden inside each of 24 eggs that their very confused milkman had handed to Aunt Petunia through the living room window. While Uncle Vernon made furious telephone calls to the post office and the dairy trying to find someone to complain to, Aunt Petunia shredded the letters in her fruit processor. "Who on earth wants to talk to you this badly?" Dursley asked Harry in amusement. On Sunday morning, Uncle Vernon sat down at the breakfast table looking tired and rather ill, but happy. "No post on Sundays," he reminded them cheerfully as he spread marmalade on his newspapers. "No damn letters today." Something came whizzing down the kitchen chimney as he spoke and caught him sharply in the back of the head. Next moment, 30 or 40 letters came pelting out of the fireplace like bullets. The Dursleys ducked, but Harry leapt into the air, trying to catch one. "Out! Out!" Uncle Vernon seized Harry around the waist and threw him into the hall. Aunt Petunia and Dursley had ran out with their arms over their faces. Uncle Vernon slammed the door. They could hear the letters still streaming into the room, bouncing off the walls and floors. "That does it," said Uncle Vernon, trying to speak calmly, but pulling out great tufts of his mustache at the same time. "I want you all back here in 5 minutes ready to leave. We're going away. Just pack some clothes. No arguments." He looked so dangerous in his half-mustache missing that no one dared argue. 10 minutes later, they had wrenched their way through the boarded-up doors and where the cars spread to the highway. Dudley was sniffing in his back seat. His father had hit him round the head for holding them up while he tried to pack his television, VCR, and computer in his sports bag. They drove, and they drove. Even Aunt Petunia didn't dare ask where they were going. Every now and then, Uncle Vernon would take a sharp turn and drive in the opposite direction for a while. Shake 'em off, he muttered whenever he did this. They didn't stop to eat or drink all day. By nightfall, Dudley was howling. He'd never had such a bad day in his life. He was hungry, he'd missed 5 television programs he wanted to see, and he'd never gone so long without blowing up an alien on his computer. Uncle Vernon stopped at last outside a gloomy-looking hotel on the outskirts of the big city. Dudley and Harry shared a room with twin beds and damp, musty sheets. Dudley snored, but Harry stayed awake, sitting on the windowsill staring at the great lights of passing cars and wondering. They ate stale cornflakes and cold tinned tomatoes on toast for breakfast the next day. They had just finished when the owner of the hotel came over to their table. "Excuse me, but this is for Mr. H. Potter. Only I got 100 of these at the front desk." She held up the letter so they could read the green ink address. Mr. H. Potter, Room 17, Railview Hotel, Cokeworth. Harry made a grab at the letter, but Uncle Vernon knocked his hand out of the way. The woman stared. "I'll take them," said Uncle Vernon, standing up quickly and following her into the dining room. "Wouldn't it be better to just go home, dear?" Aunt Petunia suggested timidly. Hours later, but Uncle Vernon didn't seem to hear her. Exactly what he was looking for, none of them knew. He drove them into the middle of the forest, got out, looked around again, shook his head, got back into the car, and off they went again. The same thing happened in the middle of a plow field, halfway across a suspension bridge, and at the top of a multi-level parking garage. "Daddy's gone mad, hasn't he?" Dudley asked Aunt Petunia, late in the afternoon. Uncle Vernon had parked at the coast, locked them all inside the car, and disappeared. It started to rain. Great drops beat on the roof of the car. Dudley sniveled. "It's Monday," he told his mother. "The great Humberto's on tonight. I want to stay somewhere with a television." Monday. This reminded Harry of something. If it was Monday, and you could usually count on Dudley to know what days of the week because of television. And tomorrow, Tuesday, was Harry's 11th birthday. Of course, his birthdays had never actually been fun. Last year, the Dursley gave him a coat hanger and a pair of Uncle Vernon's old socks. Still, you weren't 11 every day. Uncle Vernon was back and he was smiling. He was also carrying a long, thin package and didn't answer when Aunt Petunia asked what he'd bought. "I found the perfect place," he said. "Come on, everyone out." It was cold outside the car. Uncle Vernon was pointing at what looked like a strange rock way out at sea. Perched at the top of it was the most miserable-looking shack you could imagine. One thing was for certain. There was no television in there. "Storm forecast for tonight," said Uncle Vernon, gleefully, clapping his hands together. "This gentleman's kindly agreed to lend us his boat." A toothless old man came ambling up to them, pointing with a wicked gray grin at an old rowboat bobbing in the iron-gray water below. "I've already got us some rations," said Uncle Vernon, "so all aboard." It was freezing on the boat. Icy sea spray and rain crept down their necks, and a chilly wind whipped their faces. After what seemed like hours, they reached the rock, where Uncle Vernon, slipping and sliding, led the way to a broken-down house. The inside was horrible. It smelled strongly of seaweed. The wind whistled through the gaps in the wooden walls, and the fireplace was damp and empty. There was only 2 rooms. Uncle Vernon's rations turned out to be a bag of chips each and 4 bananas. He tried to start a fire, but the empty chip bags and smoke just shriveled up. "Could do with some of those letters now, eh?" he said cheerfully. He was in a very good mood. Obviously, he thought nobody stood a chance of reaching them out there in a storm to deliver mail. Harry privately agreed, though the thought didn't cheer him up at all. As night fell, the promised storm blew up and around. Spray from the high waves splattered the walls of the hut, and the fierce wind rattled the filthy windows. Aunt Petunia found a few moldy blankets in the second room and made up a bed for Dudley on the moth-eaten sofa. She and Uncle Vernon went off to the lumpy bed next door, and Harry was left to find the softest bit of floor he could and curl up under the thinnest, most ragged blanket. The storm raged more fiercely as the night went on. Harry couldn't sleep. He shivered and turned over, trying to get comfortable, his stomach rumbling with hunger. Dudley's snores were drowned out by the low rolls of thunder that started near midnight. The light dial on Dudley's watch was dangling over the edge of the sofa on his fat wrist. Told Harry it was 11 in 10 minutes. He lay and watched his birthday tick near, wondering if the Dursleys would remember at all, wondering where the letter writer was now. 5 minutes to go. Harry heard something creak outside. He hoped the roof wasn't going to fall in, although he might be warmer if it did. 4 minutes to go. Maybe the house on Privet Drive would be full of letters when they got back. He'd be able to steal one somehow. 3 minutes to go. Was that the sea slapping hard on the rock like that? 2 minutes to go. Was that the funny crunching noise? Was the rock crumbling into the sea? 1 minute to go. He'd be 11. 30 seconds, 29. Maybe he'd wake Dudley up just to annoy him. 3, 2, 1. Boom! The whole shack shivered, and Harry sat bolt upright, staring at the door. Someone was outside, waiting to come in. "Oh, wow, Madam Owl. I think this is going to be very interesting. Are you going to come back for the next adventure to see who is at the door?" "Awesome. Can't wait to see you then." We can't wait to see you on the next time here with Wayne Reads. Thank you for joining us for this amazing adventure. We can't wait to see you on the next one. Bye-bye.